Hi. So we were just talking about the I stem uh, and whether the I stem goes back to if it goes back to an stem. Uh, so you were and all of this uh, comes out of discussion of the form dari, uh, which I would like to be the stem of which we have the plural dareo in 32(1)(c). So you were saying, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, take shuchi for example in Sanskrit, right? So
Yes.
shuchi, I mean, one concern that I have is whether it would even constitute evidence for a proto-kinetic I stem, because in theory it could just be, the I that is substituting for the O of an adjective, right?
Mhm.
Isn't that the idea,
Yeah,
or they have,
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, and there is this word, I guess. I mean, I don't know if it's that. I'm just going to throw it out there. There's this word shuka, which means parrot, right?
Hmm.
Accented on the root. And the idea
Go
is
ahead.
shining, variegated color, right? All that jazz.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a sucha I mean, there's an O stem adjective, sucha, for this
Right.
particular word.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But in the case
Yeah.
of going back to Dario, I mean, it could be Wait a minute. Your word for parrot needn't be shining. I mean,
Okay.
okay,
That's
so
good.
we have two things we're talking about. A parrot rears its head here, uh, and as much as I like parrots, I think we should get rid of the parrot because um, there are traces, especially in Khotanese, of an Iranian root, uh, sauk or suk, uh, which is a verb of speech, something like to declare.
Mm.
Yes, parrots could be bright. Parrots are bright, uh, but they're also talking birds. That root occurs in Khotanese. There's a form such, I'm sure of that. Maybe such, I don't remember the exact form in Khotanese. But you have a very nice example of that root in the word for oath, which is Salkanta in the Western, Persian Sogand. Um, and the question of the etymology of that came up in an article that I wrote a long time ago in a volume in honor of the now late Gilbert Lazare, uh, mm, and Cahiers de Studia Iranica. And people had thought that the reason that Saukanta has that root Sauk is that oaths uh, were administered um, via sulfur, which is related to burning. Uh, and I showed that that isn't really the case with Salcanta. Uh, has nothing originally to do with burning, but making a declaration. So uh, that's where I discussed the homophony of roots to burn and to declare. So, okay, nice to see the parrot. Parrot's out of here. So go back to
Well, all right, we can dismiss that notion. I was just concerned about the and again, this is a hobby horse of mine. Where I don't want to distract us from our object here, but it's just interesting that when you have a shucha in Sanskrit, which means shining, and you've got a shuchi, which means shining, it just looks like, they're taking shucha rather, and they're just forming shuchi from it, and that's all they're doing,
sure. Right.
right?
Yeah.
But what I'm wondering about is whether there was a stage at which they formed I stem nominals from O stems, and that from those I stem nominals used as abstract substantives, they were
They
forming
draw proto-kinetics.
proto-kinetic
Yes, right.
adjectives. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering what would be good evidence for proto-kinetic adjectives? Do we find proto-kinetic adjectives in Anatolian? Do we find them in Indo-Iranian? Do we find them in Celtic? It's just kind of hard, and I'm not a good judge of these things.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's very hard
Michael,
to
why
decide,
don't
right?
I think, Michael, you could best answer that question.
Well, no, I don't think I can answer that. Uh, I mean, it would be very difficult to tell, right? Because, you know, what is going to be really good evidence for it since we don't have that much variation or even that many I stems to test it, right? So, but I mean, of course, in Anatolian, the I stems do typically show a different ablaut, right, in the oblique cases, whereas nominals normally have ias, right, which looks kind of acrostatic-y. Adjectives, for the most part, but not all of them, have, ias or as, which is from ias. So that
Hmm.
does sort of look like they're following the pattern of U stems in showing kind of a proto-kinetic ablaut. I think that would be the best evidence that I can think of. Uh,
A bit of a problem I have uh, is the relationship of these adjectival or, in effect, participial forms with the I stem, if you wish. The relationship of those to, in fact, the various adjectives and nouns that have an stem. So Bill said the only one he knows of such stem is the old Persian word for tribute, which is baji. However, I think that that's a different category of stems. I don't think you could, for example, have an object of baji. Uh, so you can say, well, I don't know how you would have an object of it, but uh, or let's say you're a Suchi, you won't have a direct object uh, of Shuchi in Vedic, Suchi in Iranian. Um, would you? It
Probably
doesn't
not.
work.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you saying, Michael?
I mean, it kind of depends on the semantics of the adjective, right? But I mean, I guess it's quite rare to have objects for these I stems, aside from the chakri type. But actually,
Uh,
getting back to
so,
Dadayo
so my point
specifically,
is that the Chakri type should
yeah,
be distinguished. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
okay.
that's that type, which is very productive in Vedic, often takes accusative direct objects. Other I stem adjectives, other I stems don't do it much. But just to return to Dario, I mean that to me that looks like a almost like a trophist type, right? Because it's got the length of
Sorry,
the
like a what?
root. It looks like a trophist type, right? In other words, an O grade I stem adjective of
Uh-huh.
the type which we have in Greek trophus, which
Uh-huh.
means, swelling.
Uh-huh.
So
Hmm.
anyway,
Hmm.
okay. But we should get to Gothic.
Ah, yes. So we were on, we were leaving five, uh, and going on to six. But before we leave five, uh, I dropped a note to y'all about this Frachinas uh, with regard to uh, Chithra. Uh, so there's, for one thing, within the ring composition uh, of this text, as I recall, uh, you have chikoitish from the root chit, which I'd have to look at my article again, but either Frachinas or Chithra, uh, and it would be more interesting if it's Chithra, uh, makes a ring composition concatenation with Chikoitish, and that would be very interesting because it would show that chit is chitra is from the root chit, meaning to perceive, and as far as what the poet wants to do with it, he is in ring composition associating it with the verb chit. And therefore, of the two possibilities of chithra in 3a, there's evidence that, surprisingly, in the mind of the poet, not necessarily exclusively, but there is an association with the root chit. So that strengthens the idea that one of the two meanings of chithra that are in play here has to do with perceptibility, clearness, rather than chithra meaning in lineage, which everyone assumes to be the case. Okay, so when I thought that that meaning of chithra, namely clearly, chithram clearly, adverbial, goes with this frachinas, that's I think confirmed. That is not to say that at the same time, chithram does not mean in lineage. I think it also means in lineage, and I think that both meanings are present in that chithram. Anyway, that was a digression on frachinas. Frachinas, of course, is the stem would be frachi nut, and the root would be chit with an infix. I think we can now move on to 32.6. We were discussing the word enachta, and whether there is a double meaning there, whether it means lacking peace, from the word achti, so anachta, a thematic stem, lacking peace, which is what everyone assumes, but in connection with Poru, many, and given the fact that in the very next line, 6b, you have hata marne, it should be marne, that's the way it should be reconstructed. He who makes an accounting of hata, things gained, things accomplished, or rather, I should say, deserts, because han can also mean to deserve something in a Western. But that addressed to Ahura Mazda here, or Mazda Ahura here, as Hata Moderni, uh, making, taking the manuscripts or as a schwa, as we have in Yasht 1, which collects all these adjectives from the Gathas of Ahura Mazda and makes a whole list of epithets of Ahura Mazda. There you have Hata Marani with schwa, which would be a ni stem added to the root itself. There are Vedic examples of that kind of formation. But my point is, mar, meaning to make an account of, to enumerate, might go with anachta, meaning countless, rather than peaceless. In Sanskrit, Sankhya, as in the famous philosophical school of Sankhya, does mean accounting, enumerating. And so, indeed, the well-attested word in the Western, Hanksta, nasalized sta, which does mean, well, it occurs in the privative, a Hanksta innumerable. Would parallel this privative form, anashta, if your root is not, if you're Edelman here, if this anashta goes back to achsta from achsa, just as you have achsta from the root chsa equals Vedic ksha, and more commonly the middle indecised form kya. The only thing is that I have no evidence for a plus chsa in a Western, meaning to account. It's more to look into something, to perceive something. It could be, because you have akya to relate, to tell, and stuff like that in Indic. It could mean something like, I don't know, unreportable and ultimately untellable. Ergo, something like uncountable with a preverb a, but I'm not sure. But I find that this adjective anachta is primarily meaning not having peace. I find that a little curious, and I think that there's another wordplay going on here with the privative of an adjective. Achsta from stem a, chsa, meaning something like be aware of, ergo, take account of something. So it's different from counting, but I think something like unaccountable may be possible here. In any event, so many are the Ainur, and it's an important word in our text.
Can I ask Marty, why do we have a schwa and then an n and then the ach? Why is it unachta? Why is it anach? Why isn't it anachta?
For that, one should look into the examples um, given in, uh, I'm sure that uh, Defan addresses that issue, but it's an, and the N makes the preceding uh, a shorter uh, into a schwa, uh, initially apparently lengthened. There are parallels to it.
Yeah.
A few other uh, where you expect an plus vowel, you get un plus vowel. And I'm not sure what the conditions of that are.
Mhm.
And I'm not even sure that it is necessarily connected with the N because, at least in a number of examples where you expect a plain ah, you get you get long schwa followed by another schwa, and uh, I'll send you uh, an article that I wrote in which, because of the positions in which that lengthened for just plain uh, occurs, well, I think it's at the end of at the end of a poem originally, and I think it's a recitational feature with those long uh, but as for why here, which is not in such a position, you have a Nachsta, I don't know. Maybe it does have to do with that N being fronting the preceding vowel, which after all it does in other positions. Um, so I don't know. We should look to Defan for that, but no one seems troubled by that long schwa going back to an earlier ah. So much so that I didn't even bother talking about it, which indeed I should have. So that's not really a problem. There are examples of that unbecoming un in the Gathas. Um, so back to the word aina, which you find in the next two stanzas and also in the final stanza of the poem. So I translated it as either violence or violation. Um, little different semantically, I think, from the Vedic anus. I mean, it's the same word etymologically as Vedic anus, but uh, anus is more like a sin, I think. Does anyone remember anus in Vedic? No.
Sin?
S-I-N, anus.
Yeah.
Indra slays those who commit sins with his arrow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Anastadana.
Uh-huh. So, so sin there is anus, yeah?
Mhm.
Uh, etymologically, uh, there's inoti, uh, which is like something like a tax, I think, in Vedic. You have, I mean, uh, curious. I mean, I think that the N is really, part of the etymon. Uh, mm, and I don't know, maybe it's from the root I to go. I mean, the way back, the root I to go plus a N suffix with a particular nuance, like to go at something, I'm not sure. Uh, Anyway, uh, so violence, uh, crime, violation, um, anus. Uh, and I think the word survives in Middle Persian as chen, not to be confused with Cain, vengeance. Okay. So many uh, are these violations which are characterized by their being, you know, the opposite of peaceful, uh, or untellable, and or untellable, through which yash, through which anuses, as it were, anuses, uh, one becomes famous, if at all, through these things. Um, it's a curious word, this rawahiyati, because it's on the one hand looks like just a denominative from srawa, uh, fame, and the like, with a ya hmm, passive suffix. I don't know if that's for sarwa, ya. No, it's just ya suffix, uh, so denominative suffix, sarwahya, to become famous. But then you have an ah srawahya, which kind of looks like the ah in the causative srawayati, uh, makes heard. So I don't know if the original text had srawayati or if this is some kind of um, secondary modification. If anyone has any idea about that, wouldn't mind hearing it. Funny word. Um, no. So many other violations through which one would gain fame if thus through these things. Now, this is hypermetric, and I think it will scan if you take out the taish. Yaish Srawayati. Uh,
If I may, Marty, about Sarawahyati, so
yes,
this is a yayo present derived from an stem
it's an
nominal.
Indo-European yayo present, yes, derived from somehow from the word Srawa. I think it
Yeah,
should be Srawahyati. I mean, can you imagine in Sanskrit Shravasyati?
yeah. So what I'm wondering about here is that why do we have a lengthened grade to the root? Is
That's
that
what I'm asking.
yeah, that's so it almost looks like some sort of conflation of
Yes.
a iterative causative and a denominal from an S stem. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes, it does look like a kind of conflation, which is why I'm asking yeah, well, is it a conflation that Zarathustra himself, uh, was it present for Zarathustra, that this form, or is this some kind of secondary form
Right, yeah.
that came about in the transmission of the text?
Yeah, it is curious. And you say that it has a passive reading.
Well, never mind. I mean, I change change that. I don't think it's passive. I think it's just a uh, denominative verbal yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, the reason why I'm curious about the I guess the well passive reading is that there's a I heard it alluded to by Laura Grestenberger a few years ago, the possibility that denominal yayo presence were the basis of the ya passive in Indo-Iranian. And you know,
Could you take this again? I'm a little slow with grammatical matters. Could you say
yeah,
this?
yeah. Yayo presence derived from nouns could have provided a basis for the ya passive in Indo-Iranian.
I see. Mhm.
Because there's more, ambiguity diathetically when you derive from a noun. And it seems that like one possibility is that there is a kind of generalization of one reading of denominals that resulted in the passive.
Maybe.
Anyway, that's what I'm, wondering about. Anyway, it's not exactly relevant, but I just throw these irrelevant things in because, why not? Yeah. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, my suspicion is that um,
Like he, she, it is provided with fame,
my
or,
suspicion is that it's originally Shra Wahyati, uh, and that somehow in transmission the ah was.
yeah,
Yeah. Any other opinions on that?
yeah.
I noticed that Bartolome says that he thinks there was a Vritti Sravasa from which this is a denominative, but then you wouldn't expect Sravakya. It's, I mean, it's not a good idea, but that's what Bartolome
Yeah.
says.
No, I don't see that as a particularly good idea. So um so we were scanning this. Yeah, we want nine in the uh second part of the line, yeah. So Yaishra Wahyati Yezi Taish Afa. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh. Oh, that's all right. So just take away one syllable and you get nine, Taish. Uh, what I mean, of course, is that in the course of the transmission of the text, uh, there were various ways in which the transmitters in the Younger Western period uh, were uh, making the text understandable. Uh, some people characterize our present text as a Younger Western school text, which is to say that at least there are scholia within the text itself. Uh, and that in order to explain this verse, someone said, what Yaishrawahyati Yezi Atha um, if one becomes uh, if one thusly becomes famous, uh, Yaish, he says Yaish means through those things, namely Taish. So it seems redundant to have Yaish and Taish, but I think the redundancy, there's a relative Yaish and demonstrative Taish, I think the redundancy is due to some kind of glossation here, some kind of scholia. You all know of course, the most common kind of uh, scholastic or schoolish insertion in the text. Yeah,
The preverb, right?
correct, correct. Yeah. Who said that? By the way,
Caleb.
sorry,
Caleb.
Caleb. Good. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, well, you have repetition uh, of the preverb when the pre when what we call the preverb is not really directly before uh, the verbal part, uh, which it needn't be, of course, in Old Western and in Vedic, but in Younger Western, the preverb is immediately before the verb. So, sort of situation parallel to, let's say, Homer, where you might have pro, yakety yak, verb, whereas in classical Greek, you have to have pro plus verb immediately following. Uh, of course, sometimes the prepositional, whatever you want to call it, element follows uh, the verbal part in uh, early early Greek and in early Indo-Iranian, ergo, it was an Indo-European feature. Okay. Um, yeah. So you, Ahura, who make an account of Hata, uh, know, voista, you know, thou knowest, through your best, through best mind, which is really the same as good mind. Uh, and in you, in the uh, in thy, hold on, this is a nice one. Thwahmi vor. Uh, in thy dominion, yeah, locative, thwahmi, kshathro, in thy dominion, o Mazda, o, however you want to translate Mazda, wise one or uh, wisdom. Uh, uh, praise, sangha, is to be attributed, Humbach says, broadcast from we, da, distributed, I think that's all it means, is to be distributed. Interesting form. There's some parallels to we dam, meaning that which is to be we da, as it were, distributed. We dam.
So this is an accusative infinitive.
I don't know.
Bidon. I mean, bidon
Probably
looks like.
originated that way. No,
Wait, 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 wait. Yeah, yeah. I'm wondering, like, okay, it originated that way.
Mhm.
So, but this is from vi. Well, this is from wi plus dhh1, right? To kind
Yes,
of.
yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Said about
It's supposed to be
dispose,
distributed. Yeah.
various. Okay. All right.
But
So, and it's basically like a Latin supine, accusative supine,
Yes.
without a verb of motion.
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Marty, can you say the translation again
Yeah.
of the last line?
Yeah, I didn't quite get to finish it. So, uh, O Mazda, in thy dominion, uh, praise is to be allotted to y'all, where including Asha. It's a funny way of putting it, but this kind of construction uh, is common here. And the juxtaposition of Thwachmi and Wei is interesting. But if we recall that um, from our uh, first stanza, where you have we will be thy, let us be, or we will be thy dutas, uh, to hold those who are your, those who are inimical to y'all. So you have the juxtaposition there, or the, you know, mm, collocation of the thy form and the you form. And that motivation is theological. Uh, and it could be that this juxtaposition of the singular thou and the plural you uh, may even underline the theology, namely of the deity being both a singularity and a plurality. And part of that plurality is further underlined by the Ashaisha. So praise is to be allotted to you and to Asha, meaning including Asha. That's the only way I could explain this, and I think that that is a correct explanation. This dative Ashaicha and to you, meaning including, and to Asha, meaning including Asha as part of you.
So,
To you,
so, yeah, so Asha, but Asha is the primordial thing that the Spanta Manu manifested in Ahura Mazda chose.
yeah, excellent question. I'll address that.
Okay.
Okay. It's an important question, and this is what is going on here. Um, you have the primordial, as you put it, Asha as a principle, rightness. Okay, never mind that it's originally Artha, but we'll call it Asha. We all know it's originally Artha, yes? We have Asha as a principle versus Druj, versus the principle Druj, the two primordial principles. On top of that, you have a theologumenon. I like words like that. Theologumenon, an item of the theology that the two closest aspects of divinity, to the two closest to Mazda, are Wahumana, good mind, and a divine entity whose full name is Asha Wahishta. And you not infrequently have within the same verse the opposition of Asha and Druj, but exceedingly frequently you have Asha when Asha is paired with Wahumana as the two chief aspects of Mazda Ahura, in which cases Asha has to be understood as an abbreviation of Asha or Hishta. So the Asha here, well, it's not to deny that it's also the principal Asha, but in the context, it stands for Asha Wahishta as an aspect of Mazda Ahura alongside Wahumana. Is that understood?
Yes, sir.
How do I know this, though? Here's the problem. There is only one explicit mention of Asha Wahishta. And it is almost inculcative. Inculcative? Inculcative. It is almost there to emphatically teach you something. In Yasna 28:8, which is a text which feeds into Yasna 32, just as Yasna 46 does. And you recall that the cha of Ahyacha looks back, as it were, to something else, which is Yasna 28:1 and its ring compositional equivalent, correspondent 28:8. And in 28, so 28:1 begins Ahyayasa. 28:8 is Wahishtem Thva Wahishta Yem Asha Wahishta Hazausham Ahuram Yasa, etc. We have here Yasa again. And the repetition of the Wahishta in three grammatically different forms, I think is significant in that it tells you that Wahishta, that there is such a thing as Asha Wahishta. And one has to unscramble that. Wahishta, firstly, as a vocative, secondly, Wahishta as instrumental, and it should be a Wahishtim. Yeah, it's at the very beginning, as accusative, referring to Ahura. This is the only explicit indication that there is an entity called Asha Wahishta. I say it's the only explicit one in the Gathas. because there are implicit examples. For example, the alliteration pattern in Yasna 33, 33:3. Yeah, Ashano Wahishto, Huaitua Atwa Warzenyo, Ariamna Wa Ahura We Dance, and so forth, where you have a cascade of wa alliteration, or rather wa alliteration, with the beginning of the phrase Ashano Ne Wahishto, which suggests Asha Wahishta, and alliterations thereof. And there are a few ambiguous places where you have Asha in the same morphology as Wahumana, and Wahishta in between, where you can't quite tell if the Wahishta refers to the Wahumana or to the Asha. And I would say it does to both, but particularly to Asha in such instances. So you have the alliteration pattern Awa, with its decoding, as it were, in Ashaune, to the most righteous, he who is best, Wahishto, to the most righteous. So it gives you within it Asha Wahishta, with the alliteration pattern. And as I've thought, very significantly in the alliteration pattern of the first two lines of our poem, in which you have Ahya Rizanam, and Ahurahya asterisk Brahma, wa, alongside the alliterations Ma'a and Wa Ma, in which I claim you have an encoding of this triad Mazda Ahura, Asha Wahishta, and Wahumana. That's my bold suggestion. Now, let us not forget that in Younger Westen, Asha Wahishta is common. So it is explicit in Younger Westen that there is an entity called Asha Wahishta, to be contrasted in our analysis with just plain Asha. So there must have been a teaching that is reflected in Younger Westen, that there is an entity, a divine entity called Asha Wahishta. And I think that Zarathustra, for at least in part, poetic purposes, just abbreviates that Asha Wahishta as Asha in most cases. That's a problem, but I don't know what more to say about it. So there's the good old Asha in contrast with the bad old Druj, and there's Asha Wahishta, abbreviated as Asha, alongside Wahumana as the two entities closest to Mazdahura. As for speculations, why Zarathustra um, abbreviated Asha-Vahishta. Uh, I don't know. I mean, if you have any ideas, uh, I'd like to hear them. Is it that, it would somehow clog things up to have Wahumana and Asha-Vahishta together uh, so frequently? Could it be that? Did he like the idea of the ambiguity between Asha, the good old Asha, uh, versus Asha-Vahishta? Uh, I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe both. Any thoughts?
Well, what I would be, interested in determining or getting a better sense of is the kind of Indo-Iranian prototype for, Asha and its relationship with, I mean, you could tell, I mean, like in Vedic you have Rita, right? And that seems to be a more basic formation. It looks like it's just a tall verbal adjective that is used as a neuter substantive. And what I wonder about is, what was the pre-form of Asha? It has a full grade of the root. And how did that morphological procedure realize some sort of meaning that made it distinct from the pre-form of Vedic Arta?
Okay. Uh, I'm sorry. You have anything? Did you finish your question?
Yeah,
Sorry.
basically. I mean, yeah. So it's just like kind of what can we tell a story about, going into the in like a morphological and lexical semantic conceptual story
Okay.
of what's
Okay.
going into
So
Iranian.
as I see it, there are two issues on the table, as it were. One is why in the Gathas Asha-Vahishta is abbreviated as Asha and therefore uh, confusable, if you wish, with the Asha, which is the counterpart, the opposite of Druj. So what do you have? Why doesn't, if the name of this entity, the, as it were, companion of Wahumana, uh, is Asha Wahishta, why does he abbreviate it as Asha?
Yeah,
Okay,
good.
that
Yep.
is one issue. The
Yep.
other issue is the phonological origin of Asha vis-a-vis Vedic Rita, where you have the um, stress,
Yeah, yeah. There's
and
accent retraction
tone,
to a
yeah,
full grade
stress tone.
form.
So, um, yeah, I'd like to address the latter question. I think, you know, first, maybe, there's nothing more to say about. So, the second question
Yeah,
would,
yeah, yeah. So if I may say, Marty, just to kind of, expand on what you were saying about Vahishta, right? So it really seems like Asha Vahishta is a particular term. I mean, just when you apply an adjective to anything, you're saying that it belongs to the set of the substantive, and it's just kind of a member of that set. So,
yes, well,
you know,
and a good of you to recall that very basic point for us, yeah?
yeah,
So it's that Asha, which is not any old Asha, uh,
Asha in general, but there's a
yes,
particular type,
but
right?
but a particular Asha. Uh, yeah, so yeah, certainly one has to be reminded of that fact, and you did so. So, um, but that then, addresses the first question. not yet the phonological.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes back to a Proto-Indo-Iranian. I
So
mean,
now we're addressing the phonological
yeah.
question.
Yeah. I mean, so the pre-form of Asha is a harta or harta or something like that, and
Yes,
it's
you're supplying the laryngeal,
yeah. Yeah. I mean,
accenting the first ah, are
yeah.
you?
Yeah. So harta. Yeah. Harta is different from harta, or sorry, harta, and harta meant, I guess fitting or fitting thing. And harta meant more or less the same thing, but it would be like that which is fitting or fittingness or something like that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't have to pronounce laryngeal, um, in my opinion, for Proto-Iranian. Um,
Okay.
so arta, and the rule is, um, even though in an article in some festschrift long ago, Cantera contested this explanation, and I wasn't convinced by his contestation, or I didn't even understand maybe his contestation. But the usual doctrine is that when you have uh, stressed AR, yeah, ar,
Mm-hmm.
before a voiceless stop,
Mm-hmm.
what happens uh, is that uh, the stop um, becomes uh, totally voiceless. So, uh, I mean, so you have something like uh, arha, but it's easier when you do it with a P and a K. So, for example, the word for body with a stressed syllabic
Mm-hmm.
R, actually, krp becomes krp.
Yeah, yeah.
I
No,
mean,
I mean,
it's the R which loses its voice, of course, not the stop. So, krp, and say the word for wolf, wurka.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so krp written K, schwa, H, R, P, and wurk written W, schwa, H, R, K. So, or again, the word for death or destruction. Um,
Yeah, no, I mean, I mean,
ah,
I understand the historical phonology there. I'm wondering about like the kind of the morphology and what that contributes to the value of, I guess, harta versus rta
yeah.
in
Okay, well, we
Indo-Iranian,
can get to that, but
culture.
I
Yeah.
wanted to be sure that everyone uh, knew or everyone remembered what this business is. And so the what is what the textual tradition, uh, the orthographical tradition uh, has is uh, a modified sh in the original Avestan script. This is your sh, has a bar underneath, and the bar uh, has a little twine, two little lines connecting, uh, the top of the letter with the bottom of the letter. So that is a sh diacritical in the Avestan script, as it were. Um, and do you know? Does anyone know um, how that same sound is written in Middle Persian? The Avestan word, how the Avestan word is written in Middle Persian.
HL, like ahlai.
Yes, or sometimes HR. So between the Manichaean Middle Persian and Zoroastrian Middle Persian, we can say, you have hr or hl, so that the word ashawan, what we say as ashawan, is written as ahlau. I mean nominative. Ashawa turns out as ahlau, nominative, original nominative, and all. Um, so it's not really a sh. uh, that's the way they represent the voiceless R. Okay. Um, and I wanted to give the example of marka for two reasons. Firstly, there you don't have a syllabic R. Now, krp and work, after all, have a syllabic R, which is beside the point because you have the word marka. And when you add something to that marka, hence there's a stress shift, you just get what is written as maraka, but two syllables, therefore marka. No, no devoicing, as we have in the Gothic marakaicha, and for death or for destruction. Or it's not marakaicha, but there's actually indication that no, the chef shift, the stress shift has made a difference in the realization of that. Okay, now you want to get to Ashawahishta somehow. Go ahead, Andrew.
Well, I mean, I just, I guess what I wonder about in Indo-Iranian culture, what was arta versus rta? I mean, it seems significant that they're creating a substantive from rta, which means, I guess, fitting or fit.
Okay, but none of this has anything to do with Ashawahishta, does it?
No.
I'm sorry.
I actually have a crazy idea about Vahishta, or the absence of Vahishta. So in Vedic, Vasishta is the name of a famous poet in a group of poems.
Yeah, he was one of the best of them.
Right, yeah. And the adjective, meaning the name occurs as the name of that poet or family in book seven, which is the Vasishta book, but it also occurs a few places in other books referring to the poets. But as an adjective meaning best, it there's only one occurrence outside of book seven. So outside of book seven, they avoid Vasishta in the meaning best. They only use other words.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Why?
It seems to be kind of like an avoidance, right? That they're avoiding Vasishta because maybe it was considered to be, you know, appropriate or referential to that clan. I don't know, but
Mhm. And
that's
do we have any poems? How many poems do we have from before that clan? Are our very oldest poems from that?
I'm not sure about I kind of assume they're all, more or less from the same time, except for book 10. But the poets of, I don't know, book three or book five, they use other words for best. They don't use
That's
Vasishta.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Um, well, it leads one to uh, well, let's put that aside for a minute and come back to Andrew's question about the stress difference. Uh, yeah, I don't know what to say about Rita versus Arta. I've always had the impression that Rita is secondary, that it is analogical to past participles, but I can't say anything more than that. Um, uh, I don't know.
Well, I mean,
I
my
mean, a
impression
more
is that,
archaic form would
yeah,
appear to be Arta,
yeah, I
precisely,
mean,
yeah, precisely because it's not a ta derivative. Um,
right. Well,
and
I mean, my impression is that the urta reflects something that would be basic to the arta. I mean, isn't that normally, what is conceived? That is when you have a tall verbal adjective, uh, it can form it can be the base of a substantive in ta with, say, a full grade of the root. The Paradebeispiel being the word for child, like kind in German, Genta from gun ta, right? Isn't so? What I'm wondering about is, anyway, my apologies for detaining
Oh,
us.
no, no, no.
Yeah.
I mean, this is so that now you're illustrating, so
That's the standard
Gen,
story on Arta,
Gentile
isn't it?
versus Guntal.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm just trying to understand like what the Indo-Iranians thought of Arta versus Urta.
What they
Like
think.
because it's significant that they're creating a substance. I mean, my assumption, and it is an assumption, and it is, I guess, I mean, it's standard to some, but my assumption is that Arta is secondary to Urta, and that given that Arta gets made, how did they view it versus, Urta? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
that because it's
I see
that
what you're
kind of
saying.
the thing that is fitting, right? And I mean what I wonder about it when it comes to like Zarathustra, I mean his contribution here possibly is that he created the concept of Ashavahishta. That is, it's a particular type of
Yes,
Asha. Asha is the
yes, I
general
think he did.
primordial
Yes, I
concept,
think he did. Yes,
and he
yes.
created Ashavahishta as a constituent of his conception of the worshipable divinity.
Uh,
And
and when you say worshipable divinity, so you think that,
the
uh,
whole thing is Ahura Mazda, right?
yeah, well, that's very interesting. Um, yeah, it's interesting that he took that arta and decided to make it a worshipable entity alongside the principle. Uh,
Hmm.
um, so. Yeah, certainly. I mean, I would agree that it is likely that he invented this Ashawahishta as a worshipable, as an entity to be worshipped. Um, but yeah, I'm in agreement there, and it's certainly important to remember what you reminded us that this isn't, this is a specific kind of Asha. Okay, so
Hmm.
specifies that now.
Sure.
To segue to Michael's interesting point, um, in the Gathas, Wahishta is further loaded, and I think that's that's also in Yasna 28, where you have Wahishta as a neuter as a plural, the best things, and the best things. This is a very important concept in the Gathas because it has some eschatological reference. The best things are, in effect, paradise. Uh, and in paradise, in Persian, you have the word behisht, which means paradise. Uh, through a very, very unfortunate misprint, or I don't know, I maybe wasn't thinking when I was writing my Wiley Blackwell article, I translated Behesh as best. Of course, it's not best, it's paradise. But etymologically, it goes back to um, Wahishta as the best things. Um, and there was a certain kind of mystique about the word best. Uh, whereas following Michael, there was a sort of uh, limitation, uh, perhaps out of respect, I don't know, to the poet Wahishta, Vasishtha, and his family. There's a limitation in the Veda. In the Gathas, this is a kind of buzz word, as it were, uh, because it's not only the characterization of Asha as a divine entity, but in the neuter plural, it, among other things, means paradise. Now, there are those who would say, well, wait a minute. Paradise, properly speaking, is wahishta ahu, the best existence. And that is true. That is true. But I think wahishta as a neuter plural itself refers to paradise. In Sogdian, by the way, you have ushtmach, ushtmach or ushtmach from wahishtem, no, neuter. Why should that be neuter? Because ahu is masculine. Wahishtem. I don't know. Derived from the accusative, probably. Ushtmach is paradise, and that was borrowed into Turkic as uçmak, which a Turk would associate with a word meaning to fly. It has nothing to do with flight originally. So best existence. That's important when you look at the early verses of Yasta 30, where you have Wahishtem Ahum, the best existence. And so it's a kind of important concept, this bestness, in the Gathas. And maybe there was something especially significant at the outset in Indo-Iranian about the word wahishta, which is expressed differently in the Vedic and in all the Western. So,
Is there an intimate relationship between the concept expressed by Vasishta, or rather, is there an intimate relationship between Vasishta and Varuna in the Rig Veda?
I don't know. Do you remember, Michael?
Sure, there's the very personal poems, right, where Vasishta talks to Varuna, right?
Uh-huh.
You and I were out together on the boat and all that. Yes, it's a very unusually quote unquote personal poems in
Mm-hmm.
Vasishta.
Right,
Yeah.
but is Varuna ever described as Vasishta?
Oh, no, I don't think so. Well, I don't know.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
I see.
I-
I think I see where you're going with that,
yeah,
but
I
I don't.
mean Varuna is Varuna associated with Rita?
Yes,
Because he's
yes.
god of the night who sets time like he's an
Varuna is the
organization.
guardian of Rita.
So Varuna is the guardian of Rita. Okay.
There's a
And,
special
yeah.
relationship.
And isn't Varuna a so-called Vasu, a particular class of deity? He's a
Um,
Vasu, I think.
I don't know. Does that ring
Well,
a bell? Mm. Was it? Mm.
yeah, in any case, I'm wondering about anyway, I don't want to detain us with thank you.
Well,
I want to get a
good
sense of
things.
like the Indo-Iranian, prototype for Zarathustra's thought. And I mean, given that Varuna is the main comparandum of Ahura Mazda.
Okay, look.
So
Uh,
anyway,
look, this is not unimportant what you're saying,
yeah.
actually. Um,
But feel free to not address. We don't have to address this now. I don't want to detain us.
you're being a nudnik, as one would say in certain social sectors. Your being a nudnik has a beneficial uh, virtue um, because details of uh, of your various questions are really interesting and important. In this instance, what you're suggesting, what you're reminding me about is as follows. If reminding me of two things. Firstly, if there is a particular association between Varuna and Rita, and there is, and if we can reconstruct a divinity like Varuna for the Iranian side, and we can, namely, a divinity called Ahura, not yet Ahura Mazda, okay? So we have a Varunaic divinity called Ahura, the Lord. This divinity was mentioned in connection with the Ahurani, plural Ahuranish, Ahuranish, the Ahuranis, the nymphs, as it were, the waters of the Yasna Haiti, I think. Varunani being waters on the Indic side, because Varuna was connected with primordial waters. It wasn't a water god, but primordial waters, but became a water god. So there are other parallels. The sun being the eye of an Ahura, of Ahura, I think you can make a case for similarity with Vedic. You can reconstruct even from the Gathas a divinity called the Ahura, which Zarathustra built on in his own original conception of Mazda Ahura, Mazda the Ahura, and a whole category of Ahuras, who are the divine entities. So there are a number of Ahuras, the most important for the Gathas being Mazda Ahura, but that there are other Ahuras is also important for Gothic theology. So then one aspect of Asha, namely that aspect of the idea of Asha, which is particularly connected to this asterisk Ahura god, yeah? So you have Varuna, who is especially connected with Rita. Reconstruct an Ahura, who is especially connected with the Varuna, Rita, Ahura, and Arta, Ahura Mazda, and the Arta, which is called Asha Vahishta. So a third entity would be Wahumana, but it may well be that a connection of Ahura with Arta led to part of this theology of Mazda Ahura and other divine aspects, chief among whom is Arta, this is the Asha, to which, Wahumana has then added to form a triad. Triads are very nice. You can read Jung on his essay on the number 3, but So I think that's interesting. And there may even be some traces, I think, in the Gathas where Ahura Mazda plus Asha is the basic, and Wahumana is just an addition to that. There's also the interesting phrase, which I don't want to get into now because I think it'll distract us from our text, but you have a construction which you can reconstruct as artat hacha, in accordance with arta, where what is hacha doing with that ablative? What is the form of that? It well, it's an instrumental, but the hacha is an instrumental there, but it becomes the word for of, curiously enough. But I think that there is a grammatical preservation of hacha as an instrumental originally, but I'd have to think a little more about that before I start talking about that. Anyway, but you see how your question about Varuna and Arta is very important for understanding the relationship of Ahura Mazda and Asha and the speciality of Asha, which leads to it being called Vahishta. That, in the larger context of an apparent mystique of bestness in Indo-Iranian. Interesting, by the way, that the poet Vasishtha is mentioned because he's one of a number, not a large number, I think a small number of Vedic poets who are remarkably skilled. His stuff is, his poems of Vasishtha are, I think, stylistically interesting. And there are a couple more of those poets who made a name for themselves in the Veda. And Zarathustra was a poet on the Iranian side who made a totally big name for himself, so much so that we don't know who his rivals were. And there were special, you could say, Indo-Iranian poetic personalities who became very prestigious. I think the most remarkable of those Indo-Iranian poetic personalities was indeed Zarathustra. I think he was incomparable, but no, the mention of the name Vasishtha reminds us of the fact that there were certain people who became known by name and whose names were significant. And, if if the implication of what Michael said is correct, namely that Vasishtha was such a big deal in the Vedic tradition that one was reluctant to use the term Vasishtha. If that's true, I mean, it's interesting as a kind of reflection of the role of certain poets within the Indo-Iranian tradition. End of sentence, end of paragraph. Any remarks?
I actually just have a question about the form vidam.
Yes.
Uh, so I'm wondering if this could be a third singular uh,
Yes,
passive
imperative of some sort.
of vid. Yeah. So
Yes,
let it
yes.
be known.
It is. It is. That's the usual analysis of it, is that it's third person imperative.
So
Yeah.
from
It's
vid
lost as an infinitive here, but you know.
yeah. But I mean from the root
Boombox
to
had a
know or
definition.
find that root.
Yes. No, 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 no. From the root, well, I can't say the root, but from the stem, uh, well, from the root plus we da
Vida.
from
Yeah.
we da.
Mm.
Yeah.
But I
So
mean vidam is actually attested in Vedic as the
as
third.
to give should
Yeah.
be given.
Well, I mean
Nothing
should be
wrong with
known.
nothing wrong with given here.
Yeah.
So you say vidam is attested as it should be given.
No, vidam with a plain D is attested as the third singular middle imperative of vid to
A
know.
vid,
Yeah.
yeah, meaning to know.
Yeah, right. And
Oh,
and that has a whole set of T-less middle forms. So there's a vide third singular and a vidre third plural. So it's one of these so-called statives,
so
which also has a third singular and
you're asking, can this be uh
yeah, let yeah,
sangha?
let the
Sangha
sangha be known.
should be known.
Right. Right.
Hmm. I don't know. Um,
So there
from
is indeed a Vidam in Vedic. In
Yeah, it's
in
not in the Rig Veda, but
from
it's in
vid.
yeah, from vid to know.
oh,
Yeah.
where does it occur out of curiosity?
It is attested in the Tara Veda and the Shatapada Brahmana.
Let it be known, Vidam.
Yeah, right.
Interesting.
Hmm.
I mean,
Oh, well, it's interesting. If that is the case, then there could be some kind of play on uh, the preceding Woista. Mm.
right.
You
And then
don't know it. Um, uh, there, that is an interesting possibility. Uh,
and then in the next standard, there's Vaidishto, right? In the
yes,
last.
why dish though? Yes. Uh, for v plus da, by the way, uh, Adam Alpha Cat uh, has an article. I'm sure you can easily find it online on vid and vida in Indo-Iranian, and might be worth having a look at what Cat says.
Mhm. By the same token, couldn't this Vidam also be a middle imperative from a root aorist of da?
Well, that's what I thought it was, actually. I forgot that I thought that, but yes, an imperative, not.
But that's the thing, but I don't know what I wonder about because isn't there evidence of you know, the old middle in just simply oh or
There are
in
other arm
Iranian
forms. There are other
yeah.
arm forms.
For
Uh,
you're asking for the da to give?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so I know that so da itself give is doesn't it have just simply a duh?
Yes,
Like
there's an aorist,
yes,
a
yeah,
dut with a short a, which is the
yeah.
old middle. Yeah,
And they've touched it up with the T.
right. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, well, that's an interesting new possibility. Uh, but can fame be known? I mean,
sure.
uh, I translate this word sangha, as well, not as famous praise, um, but Indo-Iranian shamsa, um, uh, rather variable in its meaning. Um, what does Humbach do for it? Um, he says praise.
Yeah, and
But
proclamation, right?
sometimes it means judgment as well in uh, in Gothic. You know. Uh, mm. um, I have a slight concern which I can immediately address. Somewhere there's in one of these lines, there's a bit of a, I think, dislocation. Yeah. I think that 32:6. I wish I could read my handwriting here. Okay, I'll have to before next time
I think I
figure
know
out.
what you're talking about because I have it in my
Yeah,
notes here.
hold on. What?
I think I know what you're talking about because I have it in my notes here.
Oh, go ahead, Caleb. What am I
The
talking?
Hata Marne Ahura. I have read it here. You wrote in the Manoroish article that had gotten mixed up with Yaisham Cheat to Urichtam um, instead, and so the first half of the second line is not supposed to be located here. It's supposed to be located, I think, in the following line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have something like that. Uh, except I wrote it so faintly in pencil here. Yaisham, I reconstructed this third line of 32:6 as Aisham chit wahishta aha irichtem tu woista manangha. That is to say, I want the irichta, which occurs in 32:7, to occur in 32:6 because of the ring composition, because you have the word Reichna, Reichnanho, I think it is, uh, in a ring compositional concatenation with this Erichta. So there has to be a bit of a modification uh, as to what this C line was. So I think it's something like Yai Shamshit, of which thou with thy best wahishta manalha, with thy best mind, to woista thou urchtem to woista, you with your best mind know the consequence, or something like that. I mean, it's the same erichta that you have in usually in 32:7, but we just have to shift it up. Indeed, in 32:7, the way the text is, it does say Yaisham to Ahura Richtem Mazda Waidishto Ahi. So the idea is you are uh, the one who thou art the most knowing, O Mazda, of the Erichte, of the consequence of such things. And because I think of the semantic similarity between the two lines, Mazda's knowing or knowing best, the Richter got shifted. Richter meaning consequence, that is to say, what remains uh, of something. So this is like, it's connected with, judgment of acts. So you know best what the consequence uh, of such actions be. Irichte, phonologically, it's a curious fact that r, when it is followed by an I, has a parenthesis, which doesn't count in our scansion. So it would seem to be a later feature, would seem to be a younger Western feature. Still, it's an interesting fact phonologically that ru becomes uru and ri becomes iri. I mean, we have to, as I say, scan richtem and not irichtem, but the history of sounds quite interesting because R is a strange letter, R is a strange sound. I mean, in Turkish, it didn't occur initially. I mean, before there were loanwords from Persian and whatnot, you didn't have an initial R in Turkish, but you had it post-vocalically. Of course, in Greek, one immediately said, there's no doubt you've thought you did that Indo-European R becomes in Greek and not, was initial R is always aspirated and has a different antecedent. And also in Armenian, this is a Greco-Armenian feature, Indo-European initial R, if that's what it is, has a vocalic prothesis and Armenian pronunciation, yeah. So that's R is interesting. Whether or not there are any morals one draws for Indo-European initial R, I don't know. That's interesting.
This is from the root lake, meaning leave, right?
Exactly. That which is
Okay.
left over. And thanks for saying, yeah, I forgot to say that. Yes, it is as it were, the relic, relict.
Marty, I've got to leave now, so
Okay, I think we're in a good place. So you be well, Michael.
okay. See you everybody next week.
Yeah.
I'll continue. See ya.
Stopping recording.
Yeah, you can stop the recording now and we can chat a little. How are you doing, Caleb?
I'm doing good. I'm a bit of a night owl, so
I'm sorry?
I'm a bit of a night owl, so I'm used to being up late.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's good in this instance.
Marty, check the box of the keyboard.
Yeah.
You did not record. Oh no, you did.
Yeah, it's still recording right now.
Okay.